Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Camber Karting podcast. The Camber Karting podcast, where our favorite time of the day to get started racing is the top of the morning. We're coming to you this week, the week of St. Patrick's Day. And we don't really have a St. Patrick's Day special for you or anything like that. We thought we'd just throw that in there. But this week, it's been a bit of a rough week in the motorsports world, honestly. So we decided to pay tribute to some people and kind of go on this little walk down memory lane of motorsports broadcasting and parts of broadcasting that have inspired us and that stand out and really make motorsports what it is to the spectators. So I guess the big inspiration for this going into the week, that we have to say this, right off the bat, was the loss of one of the greatest motorsports broadcasters ever. Chris, what's some of his favorite lines?
1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, and it's go, 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 Mr. Murray frickin' Walker. Man.
Murray Walker.
If I remember correctly, he was in his 70s when he made that call. Like, that dude's energy never waned.
Yeah, that he was an amazing commentator and had so many Murray-isms, you could say. Oh my gosh. And he really, set the bar high, as silly as some of his commentary was. And that kind of inspired us. We lost him this last week. He was, 97?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
I mean, man, he was really soldiering on there. So that's great that he had, made it that far. So it's horrible that we lost him. But it is amazing that we've been able to experience him and many other great broadcasters through the years in motorsports. And then I think it was yesterday we just learned of the passing of Sabine Schmitz, who was a presenter, and she popped up on Top Gear, as I am part of the Top Gear generation. And she became a presenter on Top Gear for a while. And she was the queen of the Nürburgring, the only woman to date to win the 24 hours of Nürburgring.
Yeah, 96, right?
Yep, 96.
And she finished like 4th in like 2008 or something.
Yeah.
It is pretty recent, pretty far apart from obviously a win in the top 5.
Yeah. So a great racer.
Power.
And she grew up at the Nürburgring, I believe. She was born there.
I think her parents owned a restaurant, I believe. Yeah.
So it was really sad to see the passing of these two great broadcasters, people involved in expanding the world of motorsports to all of us plebe spectators, I guess. And they both had very different approaches to it, obviously. So this week we're just going to talk about our favorite broadcast moments, and I guess let's start with the Murray-isms. Let's start off strong, Chris. What are some other Murray-isms we can think of?
Well, here's just an example of how skilled Murray Walker was, and what a quick thinker he was. He was commentating, I want to say it was 1992 British Touring Car Championship, basically the UK's NASCAR at the time. Silverstone and I want to say it was Steve Soper and one other guy got together, and coming out of, I think, Beckett's, there's an onboard camera shot, and one of the drivers just gives the other dude the bird through the windshield, and Murray says without missing a beat, "And I'm going for first," says Soper. like okay, not sure that's what he was saying, but that was I mean, that was probably the quickest thinking and best reaction I've ever heard from a commentator to a driver, visibly showing their frustration on live national television. Anything involving Senna passing someone or Senna spinning someone, Murray Walker, I mean, I can't think of Formula One, the majority of Formula One's broadcast history, and not hear his voice in the back of my mind. You know,
The lead
I
car
mean,
is unique except for the one behind it, which is identical.
yeah,
I'm looking at a list of his quotes right now. Oh man. Yeah, he is. Oh, you think of F1 commentary, you just think of him. And I think a few years ago when McLaren was doing their tuned cartoon series, I don't know if they brought in Murray Walker to voice a character, but they had someone basically voice Murray Walker at least a couple times in it and do some of his silly quotes.
this would have been Senna's third win in a row if he'd won the two before. Man. Oh, by the way, guys, there's going to be a lot of really bad British accents in this
Yeah.
episode, so just keep calm and carry on.
Yeah. With half the race gone, there is still half the race to go, or there's half the race still to go.
Yeah.
Oh my god. There's 7 winners of the Monaco Grand Prix on the starting line today, and 4 of them are Michael Schumacher.
I mean, yeah, and it wasn't just F1. Like I said, BTCC and various other, overseas racing championships. I mean, he could make anything exciting. I'm pretty sure watching some of the old BTCC races, I think they turned up the frame rate a tiny bit for tape delay stuff. I'm pretty sure they turned up the frame rate just to keep up with how fast he was talking, because I don't remember those cars being capable of going as fast as they looked, but it kept up with the pace of his speech.
Yeah.
Just it added energy. It made every corner of every race feel as though it were the championship decider, which is a feeling that modern motorsports has been trying to chase and manufacture. And I say chase, like pun intended, for the past 20 years. So he did that, just as a matter of course, just as a matter of his style.
Yeah. He was, I guess the one thing about Murray Walker is probably a lot of people admittedly probably could relate to his talk a little more than some. He was pretty plain about things, and that was something really needed at the time. So, and we're never gonna get probably anyone close to his style ever again. I mean, I think his most memorable quote would probably be when Damon Hill won the title, I believe, when he took the title at Suzuka. And I just remember Damon Hill coming across the line. He's like, and Damon Hill comes across the line, and I have to stop now because I have a lump in my throat. He was just so moved by that. I mean, it was just so incredible.
And honestly, I'd say that a lot of modern British commentators have tried to pattern themselves after his style. I mean, as commentators go, the ones from England are they have a very excited style, but just thinking about recent ones, the guy who's currently covering Trans Am has seems to have a kind of a similar style. Not the same. It's like you said, you can't replace Murray Walker, but it seems that it had, and his presence had an effect and a legacy in the industry that he was so heavily involved in on the broadcasting side.
Yeah. I would say, was it Will Buxton? Was it Will Buxton I'm thinking
Yep.
of? Yeah. Will Buxton is probably, he's a lot more technical minded, and it seems like he does a lot to get kind of the inside scoop on things. But he would probably be the closest modern equivalent, or I'd say the next in line, specifically with Formula One. I think, with his passion for it and his coverage. So I always love to watch Will Buxton's little snippets, and anytime he does interviews or anytime they talk to him, have him on during the race. So that's always really neat. So shout out to you, Will Buxton. And then, you know, we don't get as many European commentators here, or we don't think of Formula One. You know, James Hunt had a really great stint as a Formula One commentator. If anybody can remember that.
Yep.
His famous line about Senna when he drove to second place at Monaco won. He's not about to become world champion this year, but it's undoubtable that he'll become world champion in the future. You know, he predicted that right there, and was a very good commentator, I feel like. So it's sad that we lost him so soon, because I think his career as a commentator was just starting, really just going to take off, and that would have been really neat to see him, what he would have had to say about some of the battles in the mid 90s all the way up to modern times. But I guess, you know, since we're Americans, we got to get it back across the pond here to our side, and oh boy. I want to talk about.
Well, in the beginning, there was Sid Collins,
Yeah.
and I think I don't think you could talk about American motorsports broadcasting without, you know, the original voice of the 500, Sid Collins.
Now stay tuned for the greatest spectacle in racing.
Yes, the father of that term. And I believe he's the one that helped jumpstart, you know, a lot of other careers like Paul Page. But
Yes.
you know, at a time when the Indy 500 was the biggest race in the world, you know, Le Mans arguably second, but the Indianapolis 500 was the biggest race in the world. And when, you know, it was almost exclusively shown, you know, almost exclusively transmitted via radio. You know, you needed you needed someone who was very eloquent and could paint a good picture, but also, you know, didn't wax poetic when there was action going on. And Sid Collins struck that balance and kind of set the he set the standard for that to you know, going into the middle part of the 20th century.
Yeah, Sid Collins was really the start, and he was gone. I didn't really get to listen to, you know, I've listened to old broadcasts. I didn't get to really listen to him that much, you know, growing up. So when you talk about the next step being like Paul Page, you know, that's where it started for me, and that's what I remember as like the gold standard. And yeah, Sid Collins very much started all that. His famous phrases there, the way he covered it, you know, that was he was it there for a long time, and then we moved into I think we moved into Paul Page after him.
I think there's Jim McKay for
Okay.
Wide World of Sports, because I know they cover it, you know, the rest of the champ car and Winston Cup calendar. I think that's who you know, for like my parents' generation, that's who, you know, my mother, you know, I remember one time I was watching a F1 documentary, and she's like, "Oh, it's Jackie Stewart." Like, wait, what? She's like, "Oh yeah, I remember Jackie Stewart from when I was a kid," because he and Jim McKay were the broadcasters for Grand National Racing back in the 70s.
Yeah,
You know,
so the tape delay coverage was Jackie Stewart, and so he was the host. Jim McKay was the lap announcer, and then you had Sam Posey there for a while. Jackie Stewart came in and did color commentary with him. Chris Economaki is another big name that we have to mention. Oh man. So yeah, we're just kind of working our way through these legendary presenters. But yeah, Jim McKay, Chris Economaki. Oh man, just all these great color commentators, and then eventually, like I said, Paul Page, and I miss Sam Posey quite a bit. I
Yeah.
know that, but it was really nice to have his calm demeanor to really balance things out. He could explain things.
Especially when Bobby Unser was also there.
Bobby always had a story for anything.
You got to wait for the cars to spool up. It's like a giant flywheel. It takes a couple laps for them to get going.
And then R&R Day back in... Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Bobby Unser. And then you'd have Sam Posey, just real calm, real cool, real collected, just come in, really slow. And I remember when I first started watching F1, he would do part of the intros for every race, I think.
Yep. I mean, the man's a poet that just happened to drive a race car for a while.
Yeah. So it was really cool to hear Sam Posey doing that. But yeah, then we move forward, like I said, into Paul Page. I know I'm talking him up quite a bit, but that was that was my childhood, and I really consider him to be like the gold standard. And he was the late 80s all the way through the late 90s on TV, and then I believe he went into radio coverage. Because I remember going to the 500 few years back, which was his last call of the race, I think, and he covered it, and that was really fun to hear him on the radio. And Paul Page is he's got that sharp tone. That's the only way I can describe Paul Page, is a really sharp tone.
Unmistakable.
Unmistakable.
Absolutely.
Just this little. He's a really short guy. But man, you know it's Paul Page if he ever opens his mouth. Like if I was working at McDonald's and he rolled up, I'd be like, "Oh, hey, you're Paul Page. I got you."
Well, I was the first time I think it was my first season at Indy when I was doing the EV Grand Prix stuff. I was walking through one of the infield tunnels, just as we do where I'm from. It doesn't matter if you know the person or not. You smile, wave, and say hello, right?
Yeah.
And this man of somewhat short stature said, "Hi, how you doing?" I was like, "Oh my God, it's Paul Page." But of course, I didn't get breath back in my lungs until he was already 10 feet behind me, and I really do regret not just interacting more.
While I was not there for this, ladies and gentlemen, let me paint the picture as a color commentator would do. As Chris is walking by, he sees this man and he says, "Hi, hello." And the man goes back, "Hi." And he's like, "Oh." And
I about fainted.
It's akin to the Rascal Flatts song, "I melt." Every time you look at me that way. and we've been demonetized.
Oh man.
Cut that out.
Oh, man.
Cut it out.
I mean, usually I have the guts to at least say something like, "Oh, hey, it's thank you, you're great, I'm a fan," or something, not to bother them, but just to say, hey, acknowledge all that they've done. But I was absolutely gobstoppered on that one. I just kind of stumbled down to the exit of the tunnel, and yeah, that's why I knew going to Indy would be an addictive part of my life.
That's exactly like when I bumped into Dan Weldon, and the only thing I could think of was, "I like your Pumas, man." His shoes, because he had on his chrome Pumas. Oh, but he got that, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, same feeling. Just I melt, minus the music in the background. It's okay. We're not really monetized anyway on YouTube, so there. But yeah, Paul Page, geez. And then we get into the modern broadcasters, and I would say probably
you can't forget Bob Jenkins.
Oh,
first of
yes.
all.
Oh, I'm sorry. I would never forget Bob Jenkins. I was saying getting into the modern broadcasters.
Well, I mean, he started back in the 80s with ESPN. 83 first coverage, first live coverage, flag to flag for an ESPN broadcast. 1983 Rockingham Cup
No,
race, I believe.
well, Bob Jenkins did 500. I think he did it twice. Is the main color or is the main host. Um, but yeah, Bob Jenkins definitely, man, one of the all-time greats as well. I mean, how do you even talk about that? I mean, he, oh my gosh, when you hear Bob Jenkins and I'm trying to think, man, because he did, I think he did um, coverage at the racetrack also at Indy. Like he was in the announcer's booth up there with Dave Calabro a few times. But yeah, you think of Bob Jenkins and all of his motorsports coverage, not just the 500, NASCAR, everything. How do you not, bow down to this man? Jeez,
Right.
he's made it so interesting.
I mean, I was too young to have heard him or to have like recognized his voice on NASCAR stuff in the late 90s because I think he was mostly doing the when they went to Fox in 01. Then it switched to Mike Joy, but the moment, the it moment for me, I'd heard his voice, in watching old races and in replays and compilations and documentaries. But I remember when the first full season I watched of IndyCar, like followed every race, was 2012, which was his last season broadcasting, as the on television, and I don't think I realized that it was Bob Jenkins until the last race at Fontana. I remember I'm sitting on my parents' bed, and they do like a tribute to Bob Jenkins, and I like grab my mom, like, oh my God, it's Bob Jenkins! I've been listening to Bob Jenkins all year. It's just like, yeah, you didn't know that was Bob Jenkins? I'm like, oh my God, it's Bob Jenkins. I think I hung on his every word for that entire race. I'm sorry your boy Will Power spun out in that race.
I'm sorry too.
Yeah, but
he did that a couple times at least.
that was back during the okay, how's he gonna lose the championship this year?
Yeah, I was like, yeah, it's like, how's he gonna lose it this year? And then he finally won it. I'm like, okay.
Woosah. But speaking of Bob Jenkins, I think he's battling brain cancer right now, if I'm not mistaken. So we just want to wish him well.
Yes.
Yeah, man. I think Bob Varsha and Brian Till just had their own battles with similar illness. It's been a rough time for broadcasters, man.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Mr. Jenkins, Bob, if we may, if you are out there listening to this, or if this gets through to you, here at the Camber Karting Podcast, we love you, man, and battle hard. We're behind you 110% on this.
Absolutely.
Amen.
But
cancer sucks.
It does. So, yeah, we're getting through into the modern times, and I would say, wrapping up the IndyCar side of things, I would say Lee Diffie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lee Diffie. That's all I have to say is Lee Diffie.
Oh man. Talk. I mean, I was kind of, like I said, after that 2012 season, I was kind of skeptical about where it how things would go, right? Like who would replace him. Yeah, you hear Lee Diffie speak, and yeah, immediately understood that the series was in good hands.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about passionate.
Oh my gosh.
And able to, like a good broadcaster can guide the two the two ex drivers in the booth to because they can be loose cannons at times and can kind of guide them to speak to a specific point. Yeah, Lee Diffie is a class act.
Yeah, Lee Diffie's definitely my favorite modern commentator, I would say, of a lot. I mean, he even has his own main quote. He's like, "And the flags are about to go out, and it's time to bring
the action."
Yep.
Yep.
Oh man, it's great. And I had a friend I think it's a year or two ago, and him and his family watch IndyCar and they love Lee Diffie, and they wrote to Lee Diffie and talking about his kids wrote and said how much they loved his commentary, and he wrote back and sent them some stickers that say it's time to bring the action. And
he seems like a class act.
He is a really cool guy, from what I understand. So that was really cool. So I hope Lee Diffie gets to stay on board throughout all the tumultuous broadcasting troubles of IndyCar that are happening.
Oh man, like that's that's a good segue, because you can't just you can't just put a couple cameras together and go on, start broadcasting live and have a good show. And you can't also, put a bunch of technology together and have a good show. Because I remember, we remember NASCAR in the late 2000s. Like, okay, how much CGI are we going to use? Why not all of it?
We created a gopher.
Digger. like NASCAR on Fox and ESPN on ABC, looking at you guys. But
TNT's okay though.
Yeah, you got to get a good balance. You can't. And let me go. I know I'm the Trans Am fanboy, but let me point to something here. When Trans Am finally rebuilt itself and started having broadcast races, albeit tape delayed, on the CBS Sports Network, the good old home of the ARCA series back in the day. It was tape delayed coverage, CBS Sports Network, with Rick Benjamin, who I call the king of tape delayed race broadcasting, another very distinct voice. Him and Michael McDowell, right? And you could tell that the budget wasn't great, but it was enough that it got me hooked, and it helped Trans Am develop a cult following, and kind of regain some of the notice that it had lost during its down period at the end of the 2000s. And the coverage and direction was getting better. They've got 4 classes of cars to cover, and you got like a 45-minute broadcast, so it's still kind of tough. But then they went to the live stream format with Jonathan Green. And all I have to say is that make sure that the broadcasters are seeing the same thing that the people at home are seeing. Because if I see a car spin out, but it takes another 20 seconds for anyone to mention that there's a double yellow on a track, something's going wrong in the director's van, in the direction there, And I think we're a bit more picky about the quality of our race broadcasting, but it just shows you can't. It's a tough balancing act that you have to work with. I think IndyCar is suffering right now just because that whole package is getting shuffled around. Yeah, please, someone else talks. I'm talking too much.
It's okay. No,
Wearing your voice out. Why don't
Uh,
we move on to
now,
NASCAR?
Well,
Who's our best NASCAR announcers?
oh
I
geez,
know
that's you
mine.
guys.
for like modern or from back in the day?
Yes.
Okay, back in the day, that'd have to either Ken Squire and
Yes.
Ned Jarrett,
The only
or
correct answers.
yeah, Ken Squire and Ned Jarrett, or Bob Jenkins, Benny Parsons, and Ned Jarrett. Or when on certain occasions, Dr. Jerry Punch, Benny Parsons, and Ned Jarrett.
Oh
What can I
man,
say? I love
yeah,
Dr. Jerry Punch. Great guy.
Dr. Jerry Punch. Oh, there's been the thing is I've listened to NASCAR probably the most, or watched NASCAR probably the most, and I can't remember half the commentators' names because there's been
Well,
so much of it.
I mean, there was the Diamond P network and TNN and the whatever it was, like the Superstation WTBS or something. Throughout the 80s and 90s. So, it kind of ran the gamut of broadcasters from Eli Gold to pretty sure Larry Nuber did some NASCAR commentary at one point.
Yeah,
Jackie
So,
Stewart.
Jackie Stewart, of course.
he is immortalized. I think. Was it Jackie Stewart or who? Or no, maybe I'm trying to think because in the movie Stroker Ace, they had that was Chris Economaki, I'm pretty sure, and maybe it was David Hobbs. They had in the booth for the last race that Burt Reynolds' character Stroker Ace was in, or the last race of the movie. But that was really interesting.
Speaking of David Hobbs, 2015 MAV TV 5, or I guess it would have been, was it still called the MAV TV 500? Anyways, the Fontana race, the last race at Fontana for the Indy cars. And I don't know what scheduling conflict came up, but it ended up with Lee Diffie, David Hobbs, and Steve Matchett from F1 commentary in the booth for the wildest super speedway race in well over a decade in IndyCar. And I thought Steve Matchett was going to I thought he was going to molt. I thought he was going to shed his skin just due to agitation, man. Because
That's how we all felt about the race.
they'd go into turn 1 5 wide, and you've got Juan Montoya and Marco Andretti trying to door slam each other on the high side, plus, take your pick of who else was in the pack behind them. And I think Steve Matchett, he must have had a serious come to Jesus moment about what racing was. Yes, that definition is broader than you ever could have imagined, sir.
And then you have David Hobbs, and he's up there in the Clag right now. The Clag monster.
Well, looks like he's done blowed up. I think that was I want to say that was like
Jackie.
Mark Webber at Monaco blew up or something. David Hobbs, he's done blowed up.
This sounds like a Spinal Tap, commentator to race. He's done blowed up. We like to have fun here, guys. We like to go to 11. Oh gosh, yeah, David Hobbs, Steve Matchett, Bob Varsha, those guys in the booth for the American F1 side of the commentary. Oh man. And then they brought in Lee Diffie a few times, and I think we still got some Will Buxton. That was back during the Red Bull dominance. That was fun. That was a lot of fun, and I miss them.
Hell, Lee Diffie did a NASCAR race at Watkins Glen once.
Oh wow, he's all over the place. Jeez.
I mean, he started out in V8 supercars, but I remember him from Grand Am.
Oh,
especially
what was he doing, Grand Am?
Yeah, like in 2010, 2011, right before he went over to IndyCar, he was doing Grand Am. Because that was like the only sports I was a Grand Am diehard. Oh my gosh. Um, yeah, and he
Yep.
it was him, Calvin Fish, and Dorsey Schrader, and then it became Bob Varsha, Calvin Fish, and Dorsey Schrader, and the
Oh, I remember
Dorseyisms.
this.
Good Lord, man.
I remember this.
I don't know how Calvin Fish ever kept a straight face working with Dorsey Schrader.
While we're talking about the Grand Am and now IMSA coverage, I would argue, admittedly, and I am talking directly at you, IMSA. This is my statement to you, and I will be probably canceled for this slightly. It's not a bad cancellation, it's just my opinion. But I much prefer to watch the live stream of the race with the Radio Le Mans commentary.
John Hindhaugh.
Yes.
Yes.
Shea Adam.
Shea Adam is amazing.
They
her dad was good, but she's a really good pit reporter. Good.
Yeah. And I love watching it with their commentary. Even the nighttime crew that comes in for Radio Le Mans is funny. And pretty good. It's just I can't stand the direction they've gone with it, and I know you guys are really big current NASCAR. You're lifers for NASCAR, and I was in the NASCAR boom, but
You're a NASCAR boomer, you're saying?
Yeah, I'm a NASCAR boomer. I was a NASCAR kid of the 90s. I don't really like Dale Jr. and Rutledge Wood doing the 24 hours of Daytona.
That's my problem with NBC.
Or Indy 500.
Yeah, that's my problem with NBC. We're gonna get in so much trouble for this. So before we go any further, we would like to have broadcasting careers. So please ignore our venting, but also
none of this ever happened. Don't watch this or listen. Listen to all the others, but not this specific.
Well, just so we know, it is a podcast, and there are a lot of opinions in podcast. We aren't paid by anyone to do this.
Right.
I know we have that little sponsor segment, but they're not paying us to say anything except what I say before. So, and even that's not a whole lot. And I'm probably going to get in trouble for that, but oh well. So these are our own opinions. Continue.
So NBC has helped facilitate the modern renaissance of sports car racing, and American racing, in that it has facilitated the crossover of a lot of the television personalities and the crossover of a lot of coverage. So that what used to be, because I remember when IndyCar was on Versus.
Oh
right?
boy!
Like, yeah, come on.
Did that become NBC Sports though?
It did.
Yes,
it did. But that was a good move, because who'd ever heard of Versus?
Yeah.
Right. So
only me when I watched Versus by accident. We went on vacations to the Badlands and we had nothing else to do.
Right.
On like an off day.
But yeah,
I watched the Tour de France.
But with it, I mean, it's allowed all of the three major American series to be in a central location for at least a good portion of their coverage, which is why it sucks that it's going away. NBC Sports Network, like I'm heartbroken that's going away. But so it's allowed all these series to share the limelight, and to once again have commentators crossing over, and then drivers crossing over, and which is what we as fans have been begging for, because that's like the good old days. But at the same time, NASCAR has really dominated it, not only in the programming but also in the flavor, right? So because NASCAR's broadcasting style dare I say, plays fast and loose with the concept of professionalism sometimes.
Mhm.
And it
They know their audience.
yeah, they know their audience, but but then it kind of gets to the point where you're they don't. There are times when you're like, okay, that NASCAR made a bad call on whatever that penalty was, or not throwing the caution or throwing the caution. It was a bad call. I know it was a bad call, but you're not going to say it because you don't want to piss off NASCAR, right? And that the loss of that ability to, or the erosion of that ability to call a spade, and as there's been that that really started in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and and now you get to the point where even if Austin Cindric isn't running in the top 10, there's still talk about Austin Cindric, right?
Yeah.
Or like with the Rolex 24 coverage, how much airtime did they spend talking about Chase Elliott?
Oh, jeez.
Like, come on, guys. We've got Kamui Kobayashi. This is a great opportunity to get American fan to introduce American fans to wonderful overseas drivers, right?
Yeah.
So it just it felt like that line between being a professional journalist and broadcaster and being part of the PR arm of that series and doing what's in that series' best interest instead of, I know I'm dropping some spicy hot takes right now, but it seemed like that line kind of blurred with NASCAR in the past decade.
Christian, I feel like this take is a lot more popular than you think it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it started to bleed over into IndyCar, and that, oh man, yeah, not pleased about that. And I just hope it doesn't bleed over into IMSA, because there is something nice knowing that okay, yeah, all the people in this racing community interact and know each other, right? But at the same time, you got to be able to say, yeah, that dude just spun the other guy out. Like, especially when he's a popular driver. I'm not going to point fingers or call names, but when he clearly spins someone out, and you're like, and you just stop short of saying that he nerfed the other dude into the tire barrier or into the safer barrier. That kind of makes me antsy. Am I the only one here like that, or is that
no.
Yeah, I agree, because you kind of there's obviously grace to it, but you can't just not tell the truth. Well, I think where this came into play from my point of view was, calling out the quality of racing itself in the series, especially with the way NASCAR has created this high downforce, low horsepower aero package for the intermediate tracks. And the drivers don't really like it, but NASCAR thinks it's going to be good for the TV ratings. The fans are going to like it, but the drivers sure as hell don't enjoy it. But do you hear about that during the broadcasts? No. What you do hear about is how much more strategy and track position matter.
Yeah.
Those are signals right there.
And how NASCAR has done a great job with this new package. It's going to make the racing so much more interesting. And it's like, yeah, we've been following the leader. He's got a 8.5 second lead. You sure now's the time to say that? The other thing is, if you think back on the day, like the drivers, now we still have drivers like Brad Keselowski and Tony Stewart a couple of years ago who, criticized NASCAR. But back in the day, even Richard Petty, Bobby Allison, and Dale Earnhardt were like, this restrictor plate thing's a dumb idea. You're gonna get people killed. And you never hear. I mean, I can only think of one driver who would say something like that nowadays. You know,
And his name is Kyle Busch.
okay, 2, because the other one's Brad. But yeah, and that's a whole nother issue. The issue of having to toe the company line in terms of NASCAR. But I just think on the broadcasting side alone, it does. I thought I was going crazy and that I was the only one that noticed it, but I'm glad to hear that other folks, other
Oh
fans
yeah.
have raised the same issue.
Part of the reason I don't watch NASCAR anymore. It's one of the many reasons, but yes, that's part of it.
Like you guys know about the K&N, well, I guess now it's the Arca Menard Series East, one of the 3 Arca Menard series, in what can only be called a public relations snafu. But formerly the K&N Pro Series East, that, like, on my iRacing page where it says favorite TV show, when I first got on iRacing, I wrote K&N Pro Series East. That tape delay coverage on Speed Channel every Thursday afternoon was the best racing, period. And it had Phil Parsons, Derek Perniciglio, and Rick Allen. I loved Rick Allen's coverage, right?
Okay, so I'm
But-
gonna. I'm gonna sound like a real old guy here, and I'm not a boomer. I'm a millennial, elder millennial. But what is the series called now that used to be the Hooters Pro Cup?
I don't think it
Oh,
exists.
does it even exist? Yeah.
So
Damn.
it actually evolved,
Well,
and then it's essentially what's now the Cars Tour, the Cars Solid Rock Carriers Cars Super Late Model Tour or whatever.
Yeah.
It's evolved from what used to be the USAR Hooters Pro Cup series.
Because I used to watch Hooters Pro Cup all the time, and that was good racing and pretty good commentary.
Right.
Yeah, I remember Hooters Pro Cup.
Yeah, they're still on. They're all on YouTube now. Actually,
Presented by
so,
Jackaroo barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
I know, because I
It's
bought
funny,
Jackaroo barbecue sauce because of that. I'm like, looks pretty good.
First of all, it's funny that you say that, because when I first heard Jackaroot, I thought they just kept calling some dude Jackaroo. I'm like,
Yeah.
why are they calling him Jackaroo? But yeah, it's funny, when I first moved to the Midwest, everything I learned about Midwestern brands, I learned from watching Arca.
Oh wow.
Calypso Lemonade, but Menards,
Hers potato chips.
Hers Chase the Taste, yeah, all that stuff. Hoosier Tires. When I moved to Indiana, I was like, okay, I want to be an Arca driver. I want to get one of those like Hoosier like neck bands that you get for winning the
Oh
race.
man.
Oh,
Man,
yes.
I wanted that so badly. So
I got a retweet from Hoosier once, so I'm happy. Like, Hoosier, if you're listening to this, I appreciate the retweet. Could I have one of those neck bands?
That's what you get for getting retweeted by Hoosier.
I think it was after my Daytona race. Like, I went through and I tagged them in it, and they retweeted or liked my tweet or something, and I'm like, yay! So, but yeah, back to your Midwestern brands.
Yeah, and back to my point about the NASCAR thing and NASCAR's coverage evolving. It's the way what I enjoyed about Rick Allen's coverage of K&N Pro Series was that it reminded me of how of what I'd seen of Bob Jenkins calling the Cup Series, because by the time I was in high school, I'd seen enough of the old races to have a sense of that it was a very just calm yet enthusiastic, right? And I just, now that the coverage, and this, I'm not here to pick on Mr. Allen. That was just an example. But NASCAR's coverage of all 3 of the top series just seems to be kind of scatterbrained. It just seems like it's, it's just, it doesn't seem cohesive. It doesn't seem like someone says a thought, other 2 people, debate the thought. Like, it just seems like it's just a lot of reaction.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'll come down off my soapbox.
Well, to add to that, like, once again, showing my age, I love Jeff Gordon. But whoever thought it was a good idea to have him and Clint Boyer together?
As Larry McReynolds said, there's a special place in heaven for Mike Joy for having to put up with that.
Seriously. Like, man. But, yeah. So,
Speaking of which, how in the world have we missed Mike Joy out of all this?
well, we're saving some of the best for last, that's why.
Right.
Good.
Which,
My man deserves some credit.
Yeah, so let's go right to Mike Joy.
Oh yeah, Mike Joy. Now when you talk about the voice of your racing childhood, Mike Joy and Alan Bestwick for ESPN coverage or ESPN nationwide coverage and Fox Cup coverage, respectively.
Yeah.
But man, Mike Joy, I mean, he's one of those people that you thought you knew, you thought you appreciated him, and you thought you knew enough about him, like you knew enough about his career, and then going back and watching old races and watching him as a pit reporter back in the day, and then hearing what he said about young drivers needing to have an understanding of the people who have worked their way through the sport. That's a guy who's my respect for him keeps growing. I think you guys know the tweet I'm talking about, the spicy hot take.
About Noah Gragson.
About Noah Gragson.
It was also discussed on the more popular podcast that is not the sister podcast to us, unfortunately, but the sister podcast did the Dale Jr. Download. They did an episode where they talked about that. So
the only slightly, marginally more popular podcast than us.
Yeah. So with your help, we can be that popular too. So remember to like and subscribe. But
we can do it.
Mike Joy. Oh man. Yeah. The voice of a generation.
Right? Oh man, I'm trying to remember. I mean, pick your call from 2001, first of all. Atlanta, Harvick winning. Gordon gets loose, it's Harvick.
Harvick by inches.
or Darlington 03, or oh man, just so many,
Craven got him.
Yeah, man, all of them, there's so many, and maybe it's that those are better those races are better cataloged than the older ones. But I truly believe like that I think he's got more iconic NASCAR calls under his belt than any other commentator in the past 20 years. Sorry, Bob. Sorry. Just sheer volume. Man, Mike Joy.
Yeah.
I saw him at a Carolina Motorsports Park. He races Spec E46 in the BMW club.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
It's funny to me how commentators always downplay their racing involvement. Don Heindorf raced touring cars. I think Lee Diffie has some racing experience. Mike Joy, Jerry Punch was a driver. He raced at Hickory. Mike Joy, you're in a booth surrounded by drivers talking about driving, and I'm surprised he doesn't ever speak up about his behind the wheel experience, because from what I saw when I was at that track, he's a good driver.
When you're a good driver, you're surrounded by like Jeff Gordon or somebody. That's tough.
Yeah, but at the same time, yeah, I get your point. But I mean, if you're the lead commentator, I think that gives you a pass to maybe you drop a hint every once and again about, I've tried I've tried my hand at that. Even Paul Page. Paul Page, I know for sure he raced in the pro celeb race at Long Beach multiple times.
Oh wow!
But I think he raced. I think he did some sports car racing. Um, um, he proved himself to be a you know a competitive driver. And so I like to give them some credit in that arena.
Yeah. So moving on, since we're nearing the end. The end is nigh. Let's go through some honorable/dishonorable mentions. I think dishonorable mentions are fun, so let's
Marty
each
Reed.
Oh, I knew it. You
Let's
leave
start
Marty Reed
fast.
alone. You leave Marty Reed alone. He's doing the best he can.
And I'll be honest, I love Vince Welch, like as a pit reporter. I'm not the biggest fan of him as an announcer for the Truck Series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I gotta say, I love Michael Waltrip. Like he seems like
Oh,
a
Oh my.
really cool dude. Like
yeah.
seems like a really cool dude. But and I think as a doing the pre-race stuff, cool. Maybe not in the booth. Maybe even like in the Hollywood Hotel with Chris Myers, which is like a setup that I've never fully understood. Like, what does Chris Myers do? But he's very professional, so I appreciate that. But yeah, that whatever the Hollywood Hotel is, maybe that, but not in the booth, Michael, please.
I would
Please,
say
Lord.
I would say the other Waltrip brother, Daryl.
Oh, I thought you were
I
about
would
to say
say-
Bobby for his Lucas Oil on the Edge coverage.
Oh no, I like Bobby with that. He was a
Yeah,
lifelong kart racer.
the
Uh,
unsung brother.
yeah, but I would say Daryl. I got into Daryl, but then I realized later on like how silly he is. Oh man.
I guess earlier on that was part of his charm.
And then it
But-
wore out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but do you or do you not still say boogity boogity boogity, let's go racing before the start of the race?
That is literally what I do before the start of every
See,
NASCAR
thank
race.
you. Thank you.
So
Yeah.
I will always be thankful for that being part of my lexicon.
Yeah.
Let's go racing, you bunch of hot dogs!
Oh,
With voice
weird.
crack.
Oh my gosh. Oh god.
Buggity,
Yes,
buggity, buggity.
Boogity 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 boys. Yep. Did I give you that hat, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Yep. I was at Indy and I got a hat signed by him. It was a boogity 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 hat. It was signed by Darrell Waltrip. And when my days of loving NASCAR and Darrell Waltrip were waning, and I was like, no, I know somebody who would like this, would appreciate this. So I'm like, Chris, here you go.
Woo!
It's yours now.
And yeah, that was pretty cool because it was like at the height of his popularity. So yeah, Darrell Waltrip.
I think honorable mentions Larry McReynolds.
Yes, I can get
Yeah.
on board with this one.
Larry Mack.
Larry Mack, America's crew chief. I do have to say people complain about the Brad Keselowski won this race comment, but given the fact that previously Brad Keselowski had a win at that track taken away, in context that comment made sense, and wasn't as empty as it seems in replays. But I gotta say, have you ever?
No, I've never.
Yeah, like
Oh.
that one, and that has, I mean, just the pure spontaneity of it. I mean, that's got to rank up there somewhere.
To everyone out there, if you want a really good idea of commentary throughout all of motorsports, there's a YouTube video that's like racing commentary animated or something. And it has everything. F1, NASCAR, IndyCar. So this is gonna be a controversial honorable mention. This is a hot take. Alan Bestwick.
I'm not
You
sure
know-
if that's not at all, honestly.
The older I get, the more I appreciate Alan Bestwick.
When he
Couldn't-
did the move over to IndyCar.
Oh, I was thinking from a NASCAR perspective.
Well, yeah, but when he did the move over to IndyCar, because I'm trying to think, he called the Indy 500 once, I think.
Oh, more than once,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah,
like
more
like
than
it was
I think he was one of the main guys for ABC.
for the last couple of years up until like probably what 16 or 17.
Yeah.
at least.
Him, Cheever, and Goodyear.
Goodyear.
And we can question whether Cheever and Goodyear, whether that was a good pick. But Alan Bestwick, I think he gave it the gravitas that it needed.
Yeah, he yeah, it was up until 2017. I'm looking at it here. Or no, 2018. They brought him back for 2018 to call the race. But yeah, Alan Bestwick was pretty good. Because I remembered him from NASCAR coverage, and I liked him in NASCAR coverage quite a bit, and I always thought he was well spoken. And then when he went away from NASCAR and came over to IndyCar, I was like, huh, okay, I'm cool with that.
I remember watching the Nationwide series on ESPN and hearing him say, yeah, don't forget to hit your SAP button. Brought to you by ESPN Deportes to get Spanish coverage, Spanish language coverage provided by ESPN Deportes.
We might need an SAP button for English too.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I didn't appreciate his that very old school professional presentation style. I don't think I appreciated it when I was younger, when I was a teenager. I think I wanted more Darrell Waltrip, but as I've gotten older, I'm like, man, plus he's the voice of he was the voice of the NASCAR Heat games on PS2, and
Yeah.
maybe I think it was the MRN guys that did NASCAR Thunder 04.
Yeah.
And that radio broadcasting, that's a whole nother episode because we're big
Well,
fans of listening to races on the radio.
Yeah, we've touched on that a bit here, and honestly, while we love our TV commentators, and I will never play them down, the radio commentary has to go above and beyond the Call of Duty to keep the race interesting because you can't see it. So even my wife said this, it is so much more exciting to listen to a NASCAR race or an IndyCar race than it is to watch it most of the time. Just with the TV commentary, because you can see so much and your eyes are telling you what's going on, but when you have to convey that through radio, you have to be very excited and very descriptive of it in a short amount of time.
And you have to, and using multiple people around the track, right? From Steve Post,
a lot of coordination,
right? And having to think on your feet and be like, okay, and know when to throw it to the next person and have them pick it up. I remember Barney Hall, may he rest in peace. Towards the end of his broadcasting career, I remember we used to joke that they'd have to wake him up every time the cars would come around. It's like, okay, it's your turn, Barney. But he because he always sounded sleepy, but he was on it, right? As soon as it was his turn, all right, and just gave his bit, and listen to Steve Post, Dave Moody, Winston Kelly, all those guys, Alex Hayden. I still, my mother, I gotta hand it to my mother on this one. She's one of those people that has that prefers the radio over just about any other form of media. So in our family, half of the races I was present for, I heard over the radio.
Yeah.
Either we were driving somewhere, or she had the TV on, but muted with the radio on. And the radio coverage was definitely more like there were sometimes I'd listen to the radio and then look in the other room where the TV was, and I was like, okay, that does not look nearly as exciting as it sounds.
Yeah.
But best one of the best radio calls I've ever heard was 2012 Michigan when Junior broke his winless streak, sitting in the Target parking lot at Stonecrest, in the car, and just about falling out of the car. Like I held my breath for the last like 2 laps, and I think I about fell out of the car when he finally crossed the start finish line. And I'm glad I heard that call over the radio, because it just made it so. It just made it magical. We overuse that word, but it really made it magical.
Yeah, it is. Growing up in Indiana, as most people will know, from Indiana, and if you're not from Indiana, you won't know this, but we have that lovely TV blackout when it comes to the 500. Unless they sell out all the tickets, and even sometimes when they sell out, or most of the time when they sell out tickets, it gets blacked out on TV live for us. We can only watch it on tape delay. And so we have to live with the 500 on the radio. That is a staple of life here. Like there are many things, but listening to the 500 on race day, having some kind of party if you don't go to the race, and even like I said, when we started going to the race, I would listen to the radio while I was there because I couldn't hear the PA. But having the radio commentators, it's so exciting. And I know we've had, gosh, I'm looking at my list now. So since I started listening, probably Bob Jenkins, Mike King, Paul Page, and Mark Janes were the chief announcers' voices of the 500. So all of those names on that list, oh man. And with everyone that's been the turn, throw it down to the turn 3, turn 2, turn 1, turn 4, all backstretch, pit reporters, it is so exciting. It is really exciting. And Victory Lane, oh man. Which is really funny because my hometown, one of the current IndyCar radio personalities is from my hometown. So, woohoo! Silence. But yeah, so Nick Yeoman.
And that person,
Nick Yeoman.
Ask who it was. Okay.
Nick Yeoman, yeah. So Nick Yeoman, that's a shout out to you. You do a great. Keep it up in the booth there. So,
Nick, you should listen to the podcast.
Yeah, you should. If you hear this, we're giving you a shout out. Yeah, if anyone knows Nick Yeoman, throw this his way. Nick Yeoman, if you know yourself,
tweet at him right now. I'll do it.
We don't have Twitter.
Well, of course I know him. He's me.
But I think closing our show this week, we've talked about all our commentators, and I want to do. This is the final segment, and this may go a little long here, obviously, but completely unrelated to commentators. We talked about, this was our tribute to, Murray Walker, Sabine Schmitz. We lost them. And then this weekend, or this month in the karting world, our final tribute is we lost somebody really, really important to us in the karting world. God, I'm getting choked up talking about this. We lost Faye Ladybug Pierson. And I wanted to do a little tribute to her before we ended tonight. For those of you who don't know, if you're only in the modern world, or if you're not in karting at all, Faye Ladybug Pierson was one of the ultimate driving forces behind karting when it first got started back in California back in the day. And her husband started Bug Karts. They were one of the first kart manufacturers besides the Go-Kart company and Dart Kart. those were some of the first major, one of the first major producers of karts, and we've talked about her in the past. I think during our diversity episode. She not only started the company with her husband, but she was really the driving force behind getting it started. She went for a ride, I think, one Christmas morning in one of their neighbors' go-kart and didn't want to get out of it. They got it for Christmas, put it together for their kids, and she didn't want to get out of it. So they started the company, and she became one of their main drivers. And she won the Tecate endurance race in Mexico and was truly a league above. And at that time, back in the late 50s, early 60s, women in motorsports was not much of a thing. It generally was frowned upon. And she was really trailblazing. Oh man, before a lot of women were really trailblazing, and she really didn't give a crap what other guys thought. She could kick their butts. And she was feared and respected. And it's a shame. She was also up there in age, and her health finally failed her. But this is my little tribute to her, that we're all going to miss her greatly. And it's tough for me because I did get to know her briefly. So my first vintage karting race, I got to meet her, and I drove in a Bug Stinger kart. So it was a kart that her company made, and that was my first vintage win was in a Bug Stinger. So that was really cool. So that's my little end of the show for this week. So to everyone out there, we will be well, getting choked up there. We'll be back. We'll have some more interesting topics. And remember to like and subscribe. And listen to us on whatever major podcast platform we have, or that you have. And hopefully we'll have some more interesting stuff to say. So, Chris, Andrew, you got anything left?
No, I think that's the perfect way to end this one.
So,
Yep. Appreciate all these tributes, Corey. I think it's very appropriate, especially with, regarding who we've lost recently.
Yeah, it's been a tough month, and we have debated calling this the sad episode because of everything that happened. So, but these were all legends of our sport, and we are truly, truly honored that we have been graced by their presence in this world. So, as we always say, remember to keep on keeping on and keep it on all fours. See you next time.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah.